I had an opportunity to sit and verbringen one evening with a man whose name was Tzvi Steinmetz, Tzvi Yair, Mr. Steinmetz. Mr. Steinmetz's only mistake in life was that he had no sons. Okay, but his daughters, you know the names, Lazar, Tauber, Yafi. Three of the most important minds in Lubavitch are his daughters' sons. Rabbi Lazar from Moscow is his anical. I know, I'm friends with Yankee Tauber. I went to yeshiva with him, with Shlomo. Anyway, so he came to Fabrengen. He had a yeshiva in Albany. This goes back 35 years, and he came to Fabrengen. He spent the whole night. And there was not a lot of people, and I got to listen to him. And if you tell me something good, I'm likely to remember it. Maybe with a mistake, but I like to remember it. So he shared with us some very interesting things. He comes from Czechoslovakia. That means he's Hungarian, but don't you dare call him Hungarian. Okay. He came from Czechoslovakia. He doesn't come from the Lubavitch family at all. He survived the war intact, him, his wife, and his three daughters, which was very, very uncommon. He's an incredibly, if you remember him, he was a very resourceful man, very successful businessman. He could make dust into gold. He was a balchush, he was a gifted man. I don't think that man slept in a bed. He dozed off in his he worked 24 hours. He had a great mind, very curious. He loved Torah, he loved knowledge. He was a true intellectual, but he was a very, very successful businessman on top of all of that. He survived the war intact, alle Kinder. And he carried it around almost like a chip, like a guilt. How did he meet the Rebbe? He came to this country, he was looking for a job. And Beisrivka was looking for a principal. Every 6 months, Beisrivka was looking for a principal. I don't want to tell you what happened with the old one, but every 6 months they needed a new principal. So they offered him the job. He was very qualified, incredibly qualified. He was intelligent, he was frum, he had pedagogy in his kishkis, he was a teacher at his base, and he was a Yirei Shamayim, he was a God-fearing man. So it's a long, complicated story. All the details are not important at the moment. He came to meet the Rebbe. And he fell in love with the Rebbe. He fell in love with the Rebbe. He lasted the mandatory 6 months, and he couldn't work at Beisrivka anymore. But he went into the Rebbe and he said to the Rebbe, I'm leaving Beisrivka, but I'm not leaving Lubavitch. And the Rebbe was very, very happy. He developed this very special relationship with the Rebbe. One of the components of that relationship was that the Rebbe heard that he was a Hebrew poet. His poetry is magic. It's really beautiful. You can buy it in the stores. Merkez sells it. 3 volumes of his poems. He was an Orthodox Jew, a Fruma Yid, who wrote Lashon Kodesh, classic Hebrew poetry that's brilliant. He won Pras Yisrael. He was given great awards in Israel for his poetry. All the Frum schools, when they study literature, they use his poetry. Why? They don't have to read Achad Ha'am or whatever it is. His poetry is just as good, and it's not full of kfirah and not full of romance and other things. He was a brilliant poet. He really was good. I read a lot of his stuff. Anyway, but he stopped writing poetry after the war. There were many Jews who survived the Holocaust who, as a mechanism of being a part of the loss, would stop something in their life. A lot of people did this. People played musical instruments after the war. They stopped to play. They would take away from themselves one of their pleasures for the rest of their lives. And he stopped writing shirim, as he called it, poetry. But the Rebbe got wind of this, and the Rebbe asked him that he heard that he's a poet. So he says, yes, but I survived the war with my wife and my entire family. I'm not writing anymore poetry. This was how he felt. And I know of other people who did similar things. And the Rebbe said, but that's ridiculous. If you stop writing shirim, you're making the Holocaust worse. And the Rebbe, of course, argued with him. And the end of the story was, the Rebbe said, can you show me some of your poems? So he told the Rebbe, I can show you some of the poems that I work, but I have to warn you, a lot of those poems were written when I was courting my wife, and some of them are quite romantic. So the Rebbe says in Yiddish, I remember him saying it, Kannst mir ruhig weisen, set mir gut nicht schuden. He spoke in Hungarian Yiddish. He says, you can show it to me, don't worry, it's not going to pervert me, it's not going to hurt me. So he brought this, the Rebbe told him, you can show it to me, it's not going to affect me in an adverse way. I'm okay, I can handle this. So he brought the poems to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe read them, and then the Rebbe went on the warpath. You must write. The Rebbe insisted. And he did. The Rebbe convinced him, and he did. It was very, This is not what he did professionally. This is what he did as a hobby. But anyway, the point is, the Rebbe said, it's not going to hurt me, you understand? Mirvet es nidchat. Tzaddikim get other people's bad thoughts. Because, you understand? It's not going to hurt the tzaddik.